like Asian people. Yeah?
No, it's not a matter of not liking Muslim people. I look at Islam realistically. I've read the Quran, and what I see there isn't fundamentally a religious book. It's a manual for conquering other people's countries, and wherever Islam has gone, it has what's been called by historians bloody borders. It rubs up against other cultures. You can't have Islam and democracy. You can't have Islam and women's rights.
The bottom line, I'm born in this country, right?
Yep.
I fulfill all these state wishes, yeah? I'm a Muslim. I'm proud of this country as well. I don't need people like you going around Britain hating Muslims.
As I say, we don't hate Muslims. We just regard an Islamic bloc in this country and in the West as something that's going to cause trouble. And equally, it's wrong for the West to go and try and de-Islamify the Muslim world. But your world and ours really don't mix. It's as simple as that.
No, it's not. That's nonsense, that, man. Nonsense. You're deluded.
Well,
What you are.
there are plenty of people, don't they, who live side by side with each other and have perfectly good neighbours from all creeds and cultures. And that's to say your world and my world don't mix. What do you mean by that?
That, in the case of, say, West Indians or Sikhs or whatever, they come here and their values are really quite close to ours. That's very easily assimilable. But when you have an Islam...
I work with white people every day. I work with young children every day.
Yeah.
How can you say something like that? Especially me being a Muslim.
Yeah.
I consider every people in this country, yeah?
Yeah.
You particularly hate Muslim people. You think we got integrated?
Okay, let him answer. It's the last answer.
I don't hate Muslim people. I simply look at a religion which says that a woman is of less value than a man, which says that you should be harsh to your neighbours, that says that you should do everything you can to spread your religion across other people and make your way dominate the world. And I don't want to see the black flag of Islam flying over 10 Downing Street.
Okay.
Simple as that.
In a climate already tense with debates about integration and cultural identity, far-right figure Nick Griffin has once again ignited controversy, claiming that Islam is fundamentally incompatible with Western democratic values and women's rights. Griffin, the former leader of the British National Party, has argued that while some cultures integrate seamlessly into British society, Islam, in his view, does not, framing it as a manual for conquest rather than a religious book. Griffin's remarks draw upon historical conflicts involving Islamic empires, using these past events to argue that Islam, as practiced by its most conservative adherents, is resistant to democratic norms and the principle of gender equality that underpin British civil society. Critics argue that Griffin's statements ignore the diverse experiences of British Muslims, many of whom have integrated fully into the fabric of British society, participating in democratic processes, pursuing education, and advocating for women's rights within their communities. However, Griffin and his supporters argue that concerns about radical interpretations of Islam and issues around gender segregation, forced marriages, and parallel legal systems in some communities should not be dismissed as fringe anxieties. They claim that Western governments, in the name of tolerance, have turned a blind eye to practices that undermine social cohesion and equality under the law. Meanwhile, organizations advocating for multiculturalism warn that rhetoric painting Islam as inherently incompatible with Western values fuels Islamophobia, alienates British Muslims, and hampers integration rather than fostering it. They argue that focusing on common civic values such as democracy, rule of law, and individual freedoms is a more constructive pathway to integration than broad cultural denunciations. The tension lies in balancing legitimate concerns about extremism and safeguarding British values, while avoiding blanket generalizations that stigmatize an entire faith community. This debate, reignited by Griffin's provocative remarks, reflects a wider struggle across Europe: how to integrate diverse populations while maintaining a cohesive set of civic values, and how to define the boundaries of cultural tolerance in a liberal democracy. As Britain continues to define its post-Brexit identity, questions about integration, identity, and the place of religion in public life are likely to remain at the forefront of political discourse. Whether voices like Griffin's gain traction or are rejected by the mainstream may depend on how successfully the UK can address real challenges without abandoning its commitment to pluralism and human rights.
Breaking news, Sir Keir Starmer has condemned the appalling hate speech against Israeli soldiers used by rap group Bob Vylan at Glastonbury. The Prime Minister said the BBC had questions to answer over its live broadcast of the duo's performance yesterday. Sir Keir told The Telegraph there is no excuse for this kind of appalling hate speech. I said that Kneecap should not be given a platform, and that goes for any other performance making threats or inciting violence. The BBC needs to explain how these scenes came to be broadcast. Well, joining me now to comment on that is broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political activist Chris Worrell. I'm going to go to you, Danny Kelly, because you worked with the BBC.
Is this the Keir Starmer thing?
Yes, so Keir Starmer has now, just literally breaking news, he has spoken up against the appalling language that was at Glastonbury.
Knowing how easily distracted he is, I'm surprised that he managed to make some sort of statement on it, bearing in mind the...
Well, he may not have written it, and perhaps he didn't even read it.
Yeah. Well, look, now the Prime Minister's getting involved. The BBC, this is going to develop into a much bigger story, I do believe. We mentioned earlier on, I reckon now the BBC, you watch this space, the BBC now will have a 60-second delay on anything from Glastonbury. It's too unpredictable. It's too politicised. And if you're not a fan of the Free Palestine mob, then it's a toxic occasion for a lot of viewers, because all you see is the Palestinian flags flying everywhere, saturated. And then you got this dope...
Well, the organisers even had Palestinian benches, so they had benches in the colours of the Palestinian flag.
It's a hostile environment.
For people to sit there, and there was one girl who was sitting there crying about her privilege.
No,
it's true.
Oh, my God.
It's true. It's true.
She's
on
crying.
the bench crying because of her privilege.
These are the clowns that inhabit Glastonbury then. But now the Prime Minister's involved, it's going to be a bigger story. People are saying, should Tim Davie go, the boss of the BBC? It's not Tim Davie's personal responsibility.
That's irrelevant. If you're in charge of an organisation that is making mistake after mistake, then you have to take some sort of... You can't just sit about going, oh, it's not me, I wouldn't have made that...
I don't think it is irrelevant in the sense that he never hired the producer that should have killed it.
Yes, but he's in charge of the
kill switch.
Yes, but he's in charge of the organisation, and everything will flow from him. So he is. It's his guidance.
I understand.
So when does he go? Does he go when only he makes mistakes?
I always feel uncomfortable with
that.
bosses having to go because of a subordinate's mistake.
Not him.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called on the BBC to answer tough questions following punk duo Bob Vylan's anti-monarchy chant during their set at Glastonbury, describing the incident as completely appalling. The controversy has sparked a new flashpoint in the debate over the BBC's editorial decisions, free speech at festivals, and the role of publicly funded broadcasters in moderating live performances. The remarks came after footage emerged of Bob Vylan leading the crowd in chants deemed offensive by critics, raising questions about the BBC's decision to broadcast the performance and whether the corporation should have exercised editorial caution. Starmer's intervention puts further pressure on the broadcaster, which is already under scrutiny over issues of impartiality and its handling of politically charged moments. The BBC, for its part, has stated it is reviewing the incident, acknowledging the strong language and sentiment expressed while reaffirming its commitment to providing live cultural coverage that reflects the diversity of opinion within the UK. The incident has divided opinion. Critics argue that allowing such chants on a public broadcast crosses a line, undermining the BBC's obligation to serve all license fee payers, including those who support the monarchy. They view Starmer's response as a necessary call for accountability. For Starmer, the intervention aligns with his broader positioning as a leader willing to call out what he perceives as failures of institutions to reflect public standards, while also navigating a delicate cultural terrain where the Labour Party seeks to avoid appearing out of touch with younger, progressive audiences. As festival season continues and Glastonbury's performances ripple across social media, the BBC's response, and whether it chooses to implement stricter live broadcast delays, will be closely watched as a test of how Britain balances freedom of expression, public standards, and the role of expression, public standards, and the role of it national broadcaster in the cultural conversation.